The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening and welcome to the public info meeting for the Walk Bridge program. I am Jim Fallon, engineering manager for the program here at Connecticut DOT. Tonight's meeting is to discuss the potential use of Manresa Island as a staging yard during the bridge construction, primarily because of its existing docking facilities. We will only briefly discuss the overall program. Now I'll pass it over to Laura Toole from our program manager to review some housekeeping items.
Laura, you're muted. If you could unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. Accurately capture all your comments and concerns and issues. This is the department's first online public meeting, and we've done our best to handle all technical issues. If for some reason there's an unforeseen technical difficulty, please just bear with us and we'll solve it as quickly as possible. We ask that everybody mute their phones during the presentation, and you'll see you have a chat box. That is where you are able to enter questions and concerns. And should we not be able to answer every question that we get this evening before our time is over, you will receive an answer probably through email. CTDOT will have the comment period open until July 3rd of 2020, and meeting materials are up now, and they have been and are able for you to review again at www.walkbridgect.com. And now we're going to start the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Laura. So just a general overview of the presenters tonight. Myself, Jim Fallon, I'm the engineering manager for the Walk Bridge program at Connecticut DOT. Lauren DiGiovanni from HN2B and Sarah Walker from HN2B. HN2B is our designer of record for the Walk Bridge program. So in terms of a general agenda, first we'll go through general introductions and we'll talk about the program a little bit. Then Lauren will pick it up and talk more specifically about the use of Manresa and what we're doing in terms of the lift bridge construction. And then Sarah will get into more of the details related to the environmental resources and some of the federal and state approvals and permits that are required. So this is an aerial overview of the project area. You can see the Walk Bridge in the center of the screen. This is a 4-track movable bridge, 120 years old, carrying Metro North over the Norwalk River. You can see the high towers rising above the tracks. Going over to the left, you can see the Danbury branch going up to the north. And then obviously we have the aquarium adjacent to the Walk Bridge structure, as well as the IMAX. In the center of the screen, we have the Straffolino Bridge, Route 136 over the Norwalk River. And then you also have Veterans Park and the Visitors Dock to the right-hand side. So the Walk Bridge program consists of a multitude of projects in terms of upgrading the rail infrastructure throughout the area. Going from left to right, you'll see in the green, the work going up the Danbury Branch Dockyard project. That project is currently in construction and will be substantially complete this year. In yellow, you have the Walk Bridge project itself. The Walk Bridge program will include rail and track and catenary upgrades from the Walk Bridge all the way through Fort Point, Osborne, and East Avenue. And then to the far right, you see the 243 interlocking project. That project is also under construction. that will allow us to move trains from one track to another once we start construction. And all of these projects are being undertaken in, the same duration to take advantage of track outages so that we can get all the work completed in a timely manner. So in terms of project overview, the preferred alternative is a 240-foot vertical lift span. That was the alternative that was came out during our alternatives analysis. You'll see on the far right some of the advantages of this particular alternative in terms of construction schedule and navigation restrictions, as well as alignment with Straffolino Bridge. The environmental approvals in terms of record of decision and the finding of no significant impact were completed in 2017. And right now we're anticipating a construction duration of approximately 5 to 6 years. Now I'll turn it over to Lauren and she'll go through some of the details associated with the construction.
Thanks, Jim. So as Jim explained, the existing walk bridge is to be replaced with twin vertical lift spans. Each span will carry 2 tracks, allowing for the bridge to be built in stages. So we're able to maintain rail traffic throughout construction, as well as maintaining navigability as much as possible. To facilitate building the bridge in stages, we'll be constructing each lift span off-site and on a barge and floating it along the river into place for installation. The southern span will be installed first over a 96-hour period, and later on in construction, the north span will then be floated in and installed. To facilitate the walk bridge construction, ConDOT requires many different land parcels for river and rail access, and staging, equipment and material storage, as well as the construction of the lift spans. Initially, ConDOT proposed using 6890 Water Street, just south of the Straffolino Bridge, as a staging yard for construction. You can see it on the figure circled in red. Throughout the last year, our project team has been investigating various options to improve construction cost, schedule, or impact. Manresa Island has been identified as an alternative location to construct the lift spans and offers overall project improvements by moving construction activities away from the congested urban area. Manresa is about 2 nautical miles south of the walk bridge. And just like 6890 Water Street, Manresa Island would be used for construction of lift spans and material storage. Manresa is the site of the decommissioned energy power plant. So this slide just illustrates the location of Manresa Island relative to the walk bridge construction site. It's just there at the mouth of the channel. The Manresa Island parcel is divided into a northern and southern parcel. The northern parcel use is limited to site access only. Access would be from Woodward Avenue and Longshore Avenue, local roads that are primarily residential. Current traffic includes truck deliveries to warehouses located on Woodward, and Longshore Avenue is paved and wide enough to continue truck traffic. The southern parcel is where most of our use will occur. It's a developed parcel with the former energy power plant located on site, and we won't be doing anything to the current layout of the site there in terms of removing buildings or anything like that. We plan to use a small portion of this site for staging and storage, and once the lift spans are constructed, they'll be floated onto site. We plan to use both parcels for 60 months for access and material storage and potential vessel berthing in the existing slip. The active construction of the lift spans on a barge would take about up to 48 months. Figure you can see in tan the shaded access road leading down to the southern parcel, and in orange is our work area. Activities at this work area include pre-assembly of various structural components, possibly the lift span towers. We plan to fully assemble both of the lift span trusses on a barge located in the existing slip. We also may be berthing safety vessels and emergency rescue operations to support construction, as well as temporary berthing of other construction vessels and barges throughout the construction duration. The area shaded in green is what we're calling our laydown area. This section will be used for storage of materials, such as pipe piles and girders, sheet piles for our marine enclosures, where we'll conduct work within the river, and including transfer of materials from trucks onto the barges. We'll be doing temporary storage of components from demolition that are free from hazardous materials, such as our stone masonry and concrete debris from the existing bridge. Material will be offloaded and transferred from barge to truck for offsite disposal. We are not anticipating any dredge material to be transported to or stored on this site. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah to further discuss environmental impacts and concerns.
Thanks, Lauren. These next few slides will be a summary of the resource evaluations that were conducted at the site to determine potential impacts. As Lauren mentioned, the 5-acre area is the site of the former NRG Energy Power Plant and has been extensively developed and disturbed. As you can see in the photo on the left, where much of the area is paved with little resources, and ConDOT will use the existing wharf area shown on the right in its condition as it is. To assess natural resources, a site evaluation was conducted by ConDOT's Office of Environmental Planning to determine the potential for wetlands at the site. There are freshwater and tidal wetlands on the northern parcel and in the southern parcel north of the staging and storage yard, but no wetlands exist in the 5-acre area. There are intertidal flats along the western shore, but the project will not impact the intertidal area. Manresa Island is located within the 100-year floodplain. There will be minor fill in the floodplain. Before work starts, the ground surface will be covered with 6 inches of crushed stone over geotextile fabric as a separation barrier between the staging and storage yard use and the previous areas of disturbance, and it will also level the surface for the work area. The volume of fill within the tidal floodplain is not substantial enough to cause adverse impact to the depth, velocity, or flow patterns during a storm surge event. Additionally, the project will not impact site groundwater. Potential impacts on navigation and aquatic resources were also assessed. As previously noted, the spans will be constructed on barges outside the navigation channel and then transported by barge north to the bridge site for installation. And as shown in the slide on the right, the equipment and material barges will be berthed about 300 feet outside the limit of the federal navigation channel and will not impact marine traffic in the channel. Previous coordination with and reviews were conducted with the National Marine Fisheries Service for potential impacts to Norwalk River species and essential fish habitat, and it also included the Manresa Island area. The use of the existing dock and the wharf area at Manresa will not create additional impacts to aquatic resources. Finally, the contractor has been directed to operate the barges to and from the site so that there will be no additional impact to the river bottom or increased turbidity.
ConDOT evaluated the potential impacts of the staging and storage yard on the community. As Lauren cited, ConDOT will acquire a construction easement from NRG Energy to use the site. The staging and storage yard will not impact existing land uses. After the project completion, the site will be restored to pre-construction conditions. Overall, there will be an increase in traffic to and from the site by about 25 round trips per day. The majority of these trips will be from the employees' use. Truck trips during peak lift span construction will be about 3 round trips per day and will generally occur Monday through Friday during regular business hours. Woodward Avenue, the main route, currently supports trucks trips to and from the warehouses that exist along the roadway. The additional 25 trips per day added to Woodward Avenue will represent less than 1% of the road's average daily traffic that's using 2017 data. The figure on the left shows the distance from the staging and storage yard to sensitive receptors in the community. That would be houses and parks. The site is located at the southern tip of the island, about 4/10 of a mile from the nearest house. Because of this distance, noise impacts due to assembly, staging, and storage activity are anticipated to be negligible.
This slide shows that the minimization and mitigation measures that would be used throughout the site. Due to state listed species in the area, which has been determined through reviews with DEEP's Division of Wildlife. Special protocols and time of year restrictions will be used to avoid impacts to their habitat. These protocols and restrictions will be incorporated into the permits and the contract specifications. And as mentioned before, to provide a separation barrier between the staging and storage yard activities and the site's previous uses, a 6-inch layer of crushed stone over geotextile fabric will be installed over the entire work area before construction starts. All fuels and hazardous materials that will be securely stored in double-walled and flood-proof containers. Any lead-containing fragments from the existing bridge components will be stored in drums that will be removed at the end of each workday. In the event of a forecasted storm, containerized materials will be moved off-site, and ConDOT will prepare a flood contingency plan as part of the permit applications. Additionally, the site will be completely fenced with a secure entrance gate. 8 federal and state approvals and permits are needed for the walk bridge replacement project. The permits listed here will include Manresa Island Staging and Storage Yard as a construction use parcel. ConDOT is in the process of verifying this use with the FTA. The reevaluation consultation also included a review of potential impacts on historic and archaeological resources at Manresa Island. ConDOT's cultural resource staff in the Office of Environmental Planning determined that the proposed staging and storage yard would result in no historic properties affected. Due to the extensive amount of previous soil disturbance, ConDOT staff determined that there's minimal potential to impact archaeological resources. ConDOT has received direction from the National Marine Fisheries Service and Connecticut DEEP on including the protection protocols, best management practices, and time of year restrictions in the permit applications and contract specifications. These reviews include Manresa Island. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jim for next steps.
Okay, thank you, Sarah and Lauren, for that overview. So just talking about next steps, we will continue to receive comments through July 3rd, which you can do on the website. We will be conducting a reeval consultation with FTA, anticipated to be complete around August 1st. We will be filing for our permit applications in the summer of 2020. We anticipate completion of design at the end of this year with construction to start in 2021. So in terms of staying involved, we certainly encourage everyone to go to the website that Laura talked about, www.walkbridgect.com. At that site, you can learn a lot about the existing program and the projects and schedule. So it's a good resource. We certainly have a fairly extensive public involvement program, and there's a lot of information for the community to see there. So just a brief recap before we go into questions, and feel free to start getting your questions into the chat. Work will be primarily done during the daytime hours. As Sarah talked about, there's minimal additional traffic, approximately 20 employees, 1 truck during normal operations per day, 3 trucks per day during the peak. We are utilizing an existing industrial location, an established deep water port, and we're only utilizing a small portion of the existing site, and the project will follow all environmental best management practices. Now I'll turn it over to Megan Savage from WSP, who will share some of your questions to be answered by the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I just want to start by reminding everyone that you are welcome to submit a question and a comment at any time tonight using the chat window. We'll be doing our best to answer as many questions as we can in the order that they have been received. So with that, I'll jump right into the first one. And the question is, do you know how many garbage trucks, recycling trucks, WB Mason trucks, landscaping trucks go down Woodward Ave on any given day? And how do you plan on dealing with the added truck traffic on an already congested Woodward Avenue?
So I'll start that off, and maybe Sarah wants to add to it. I think we talked about, we are aware of existing traffic on Woodward Avenue. As we talked about, really the additional traffic that will be created by the program is minimal. We're talking about 20 employees going back and forth on a regular basis. During normal operations, when we're constructing the lift span, we have 1 truck per day, and then during the peak, three trucks per day. So the add, if you will, that the program or the project will be adding to the existing traffic pattern is really pretty minimal. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that answer.
No, the only thing I would add is that it's important to point out that all the existing bridge components will be primarily access to the site will be by barge, and then they will be trucked out. Oversized deliveries would be infrequent. There may be overheight loads on occasion. That's about all I have to add on that.
Okay, thank you.
And as a follow-up to that question, someone has asked, will there be set hours for trucks to run up and down Woodward?
So I think this is Jim Fallon. I mean, we're certainly anticipating that it would be during daytime hours. I don't think we've advanced, the anticipated delivery times enough to actually understand specific hours. But, certainly I would say for the most part, it'd probably be between 8 and 4 during the day. So, but as we get closer to construction and we understand the deliveries and whatnot, then we'll get into more specifics. But again, I just like to emphasize the number of additional trucks is rarely fairly minimal.
Next question. Will this site be used for all 5 years of the construction timeline?
So this is Jim Fallon again. We talked about that. I think we're planning on utilizing the site. Some of it will be for mooring of safety vessels and things like that. Right now, we are anticipating a construction duration of approximately 60 months. Really, the lift span construction will probably take place during approximately 3.5 years. We will be utilizing the site for the entire duration, but the activity level, I guess would be the best way of putting it, will certainly fluctuate during that time frame. So people wouldn't expect to see a lot of activity during the entire 60 months. John Hannafin, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or Kevin Washburn.
No, this is John. I think that's a correct assessment of the timeframes.
That's right, Jim, and we are talking about maybe, for late deliveries because of permits, or we're maybe at 8 o'clock at night at the worst case, but that's what we're still trying to evaluate, how our over-the-road permits allow us to get in and out because of 95.
Okay, thank you.
Next question. How will the trucks access Woodward? Will it be along MLK Boulevard to Wilson Ave to Meadow to Woodward, or through South Norwalk, or along Water Street to Burritt?
So we have our contractor, Chet Muckenhern, on the line. I'll probably defer this question to him. I believe the idea was that we're going to go on Martin Luther to Monroe to South Main to Woodward. But Chet, maybe you could just confirm that.
Yeah, hi, Jim. That is correct. In most cases, there are issues with overhead trucks on 2 different routes, and small delivery trucks would probably come right straight down Water Street. So it would depend on the size of the truck and whether there was a overhead clearance issue as to which route we take to get to the site.
Okay, thanks, Chat. And I mean, obviously, I'd just like to offer, we're giving our answers, obviously, as you're asking them, but they will all be posted, and we'll make sure that the information is as comprehensive as possible when we answer them officially on the website.
Next question. There is a speeding problem on Woodward Avenue already once it opens up near Baxter. That 20% increase could significantly increase risks to the young residents who use the playground right off Woodward near Burwell. How are you planning on enforcing speed limits?
So I'm not sure the 20% increase. I don't think that we said that. I think what we're talking about is 20 employee trips additional per day, with either 1 to 3 trucks per day. Certainly, we're in consultation with the city. Really, speed is a police enforcement issue, but certainly we'll pass it along, and we'll continue those conversations with the city in terms of that question.
Next question. Can the workers carpool to minimize traffic?
We're currently evaluating that, and again, like I said, number of workers considering the location and whatnot is anticipated to be minimal. We're talking about 20 per day, sort of staggered start and people finishing and whatnot. So we'll evaluate that, but right now, based on the negligible, really kind of low traffic volumes that we're adding, we're not currently anticipating that.
Next question. Prior to this, there were 4 options for the development of Manresa. Now that is being delayed. How will neighboring communities be compensated for this? When complete, moving it back to prior use is not acceptable. It should be materially improved.
So, obviously we're utilizing the site because it offers, existing uses in terms of access to the water and docking facilities that we need for the bridge construction. The program is certainly aware of ongoing deliberations and uses, potential uses, I should say, for the site. So I think we're currently utilizing a small portion of the site, and maybe Lauren or Sarah can at least talk to how much of the site. I know they covered it in their slides, but the whole remainder of the site is still available that we won't be utilizing during the construction.
That's correct, Jim. We're using I think less than a quarter of that southern parcel, and we're not touching the northern parcel at all, aside from the access road to get to the southern parcel.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other options that are being considered? Would this be used in conjunction with the original Water Street address?
So we're still considering, or we still will be utilizing Water Street as a construction staging yard. Really what ends up happening there is if we do the lift span construction that we're proposing to do out at Manresa, we'd need to make a number of improvements to that parcel, put in a bulkhead and things like that in order to do the construction of the lift span. The other thing that was sort of expressed as a concern is our potential. We're pretty close to the federal channel when we're working down at North Water Street. So really what we're talking about here is relocating the water-based construction of the lift span out to Manresa the Water Street properties would still be used for a laydown and staging yard, but obviously the intensity would be a little bit less because we'd be doing the lift span construction out at Manresa. I don't know if John Hannafin, if you want to talk a little bit more details related to that.
Yeah, like Jim said, right now, whoop, what happened here? Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, right now, like Jim said, we are, only two options we have right now is 7, 8, and 9, which is the Water Street location and the Manresa Island location. And if we use the Manresa Island location, we can avoid the additional dredging and construction of a bulkhead at the Water Street location. There are many advantages by doing that because the existing Manresa site has the current infrastructure already in place. Those are the two main differences between the two sites. I think the industrial setting of Manresa makes that site more favorable over the Water Street location right now.
Okay, good points. Thank you, John.
Next question. What impact will this have on the nesting ospreys who have increased their population over the last years?
So I'm going to have either Sarah Walker deal with that question, or if Kim Losay from our Office of Environmental Planning, who's familiar with the wildlife out there, would also like to chime in.
I can tackle that question. So just want to make sure I'm not on mute. This was reviewed by Connecticut NDDB program and the Division of Wildlife, and they will implement time of year restrictions. So the work will start before April 15th and or after August 1st to allow the nesting ospreys to acclimate to the noise level. And then once they're acclimated before the nesting season, then the birds are used to that kind of activity. So that's the direction they were given from wildlife.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Next question. What noise studies have been undertaken to protect nearby residents?
Okay, so Sarah or Kim, you guys want to tackle that one as well? I know you covered that in your slide, Sarah, as far as noise receptors and distance and whatnot.
Yeah, they're due to the distance from the site, there were not specific noise studies conducted. Excuse me, distance of the site to the sensitive receptors.
Yeah, and just in response to that question, I think I refer people back to that slide that's in the presentation. I want to say it was 0.4 to 0.6 miles. Was that true, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next question. I saw a mention of wastewater and stormwater from construction, but it didn't say how that would be captured and kept out of the sound. Can you please explain that process?
Okay, so either Sarah or Kim, if you guys want to talk about that.
I can tackle the construction the stormwater. There will be a construction general permit that ConDOT will apply for, which will include all the best management practices such as erosion controls and inspection of the site during storm events and that kind of thing, that will be implemented through the entire construction period. So Manresa will be part of the construction general permit for the entire project.
Okay,
Sarah,
Kim,
yeah, this is Kim Losay from DOT's Office of Environmental Planning. That covers the stormwater portion of the question. I just want to make sure that we answer that in entirety as best we can. And just for the wastewater portion, I'd like to hand it over to Adam Fox.
Sure, this is Adam Fox from our Environmental Compliance unit. And I think the confusion might be associated with the name of the DEP's general permit. It's called the construction stormwater and general permit for construction stormwater and dewatering wastewaters, because it covers dewatering activities on construction sites. But we don't anticipate any wastewater on the site. And if we do, we have the specifications in place to containerize anything that is generated and treat it in accordance with any with the general permits that we have in place for the project.
Okay, thanks, Adam, for picking up on that. Appreciate it.
Next question. What is the regulatory significance of the July 3rd date? Under what authority is it established?
So July 3rd is there is no specific significance to it other than typically after we have a public info meeting, just to share information with the public in terms of what we're planning on doing for the project, and we give some a reasonable time frame for people to provide comments. So right now we're receiving comments on the information that was presented through July 3rd.
Jim, if I could, this is Kim Lissay again. I just wanted to add that, of course, we'll be accepting comments on this particular presentation tonight up until that time, but there are still other avenues by which to have discussions with us if there are concerns. And particularly, we've stayed in contact with the Harbor Management and the Shellfish Commissions. And as you mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we will be submitting permit applications this summer, and there will still be time for coordination as needed.
Thank you, Kim.
Next question. What do you believe will be the impact of activities at Manresa on Cedar Hammocks Island?
So Sarah, do you want to tackle that one? I'm not specifically familiar with that site.
So this is the area that is directly across the water from the island. I'm sorry, I think I need a little bit more explanation for that question.
So maybe that one's best answered. Why don't we take that one offline and we'll respond to it officially after we evaluate it. But I think it's fair to say that when we're evaluating noise and whatnot and sensitive receptors, certainly they're a decent distance away. Kim, I don't know if you wanted to offer anything else other than what I just said.
I would agree, Jim. I'd like to take the time and answer that with some thought behind it and take a look at how far away that is.
Okay, agreed. Thank you.
Next question. How high will all the components be at Manresa?
So I'm going to have Chet answer that one in terms of, and I'm assuming they're talking about the construction of the lift span when it's on the barge, being prior to being floated down and installed. So Chet, maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yes, Jim. The total height of the lift span is approximately 60 feet above the water. But the only thing that people would notice would be our crane boom. Our crane boom on our crane is roughly 240 feet high. But other than that, the height of the lift span is approximately 60 feet above the water. The only thing that people would ever see back there, I believe, is our crane boom if they happen to be looking. Other than that, they'll probably never see the lift span.
Okay, good point. Thank you, Chet.
Next question. How often will the barges be traveling to and from the bridge? At what rate of speed will they be traveling, and will they be towed or pushed?
Chet, you want to tackle that one as well? So I think that's probably talking about, if our normal operations in terms of, safety vessels and barges and things like that, and material barges, if any, in addition to the lift span.
Yes, thank you, Jim. to clarify, the two lift spans only go down one time. They get assembled, and the barge gets pushed up to assemble the south lift span. It comes back. We assemble the north lift span, and it gets pushed up. So the two lift span barges only travel twice. Other than that, we will have other material barges, crane barges that'll be stored in the basin, will travel to the site. I would say probably less than once a week on average. And the speed is in the 2 to 3 knot range on these barges. We don't travel very fast, and should not be an issue. It's not much different than the other normal marine traffic that you see in the harbor. Buchanan moving stone barges, GNC moving their barges, but probably on average about one barge move on a weekly basis over the duration of the project.
Okay, thank you, Chet.
The next question is, you said hazardous materials would be moved off the site. What are the hazardous materials and what is the actual plan for moving those materials?
Okay, so either Sarah, Lauren, do you guys want to handle that?
Sure. There will be, the hazardous materials consist of the steel on the existing bridge. There may be lead fragments. There'll be a tarp, I mentioned before about the geotextile over fabric, excuse me, the stone over geotextile fabric, but there'll also be an additional layer, a tarp layer underneath those materials to catch any lead fragments. Those will be containerized. When I say moved off site, they would be moved off site by truck. And they'll be contained, or they'll be contained in the event of a storm, they'll be moved off site. I don't know if you wanted to add anything more.
Yeah, so actually, hey, Adam Fox, do you want to add to that answer? Because you might be
Sure.
best equipped.
Sure. There are definitions of hazardous materials that are in the permits, and those hazardous materials include any gas containers or diesel fuel that has to fuel any construction vehicles on the site, and we'll be putting in necessary secondary containment protections to make sure that that's all containerized and spill prevention is happening on the site. And then, as Sarah mentioned, from the dismantling operations of the existing bridge, there'll be some lead-based paint chips that might be come off the bridge as it's being dismantled, and all of that will be collected and containerized and put into 55-gallon drums and protected and taken off site for proper disposal.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Next question. When you say one truck will be the norm, does that mean that that one truck will be coming and going all day? Is the truck's main purpose to be removing or delivering construction materials or debris?
So I'll start this off and I'll ask Chet to clarify. No, the idea is that there would be a truck making one trip to Manresa and one trip out of Manresa on average per day. So no, that one truck won't be making multiple trips. And like I said, during the peak, we're assuming that there will be 3 trucks. So 3 trucks coming in and 3 trucks going out. But again, they wouldn't be making multiple trips. So Chet, if you want, you can just confirm that. At least that's my understanding.
Yes, Jim, that's correct. We took a look at the total tonnage of material that we would need to bring into the project, divided it by approximately 20 tons per load, and it averages 1 load a day. We're using this facility as an assembly yard, and a lot of the material it comes in, but not a great deal of material over the course of the project.
Okay, thank you, Chet. And part of what I should add to that is and like John Hannafin talked about, basically what we're talking about is doing the water-based construction, staging, construction assembly of the list span out at Manresa with some additional construction activities out there as well that we've talked about. But all of those activities are the same as what was going to be done down at the North Water Street property. So basically, it's the same construction activities that need to be done in order for us to successfully construct a bridge, and they're just being done at two different locations.
Next question. Is the site only to be used for bridge assembly, or is the old bridge going to be put there at any time?
So I'll start that off. I think, actually, Chet, why don't you talk about that? I don't think there's a significant intent to bring the old bridge there, but you can fill that in.
Yeah, Jim, that is correct. Almost all of the old bridge will be demolished basically right on site, loaded onto trucks, either on the east or west side of the river at the former coastal marine property or where the IMAX theater was. The lift span itself, or excuse me, the existing swing span, there's certain portions of that that may get brought up to the Manresa facility to be demoed. But the approach spans will be taken care of right in place, and it will just be the center pivot pier, the swing span. Portions of that may go to the Manresa facility to be further downsized, loaded onto trucks, and disposed of.
Okay, thank you, Chet.
The next question was, will there be an increased police presence?
So we're not currently anticipating an increased police presence. I guess that could be answered two ways. I don't know if the intent or the question is related to roadway traffic. Certainly, we don't expect there to be a police presence required for that. In terms of security, certainly the site will be secure. Chet, maybe you can just talk a little bit about that. Maybe that's what the intent is in terms of security of the site.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It's our intent to install 2 webcams at the facility so that we have good coverage. They record roughly every 10 or 12 minutes. One of them will probably be a live camera, but that is our intent, to use those cameras for security. We don't anticipate any need. And quite frankly, the materials that we have out there, no one's going to pick them up and take them and walk away with them. Other than a few tools, is primarily a structural steel yard. It's not stuff that we really need to worry about anyone taking. So it'll be secured by fencing and security cameras.
Okay, thank you, Chet.
I just want to clarify, I can see someone commented that this question about the police was in regards to speeding, not security.
Okay, so, I think that was a question earlier. We will have ongoing conversations with the city. Actually, we have a meeting with them tomorrow, and that'll probably be a topic that we can talk about there. But that's, like I said, that's really an enforcement issue. We certainly don't. We have minimal additional traffic, and we don't expect any significant impact from our traffic.
Okay, our next question has multiple pieces. Are compressors and/or other pneumatic tools expected? How many shifts are planned, and what will happen in terms of extra shifts, second shifts, and weekends? If they get behind, sorry, read that wrong. I think this person means, will they be adding extra shifts onto the weekend if they get behind? And then, is there a decibel level that the project will be required to adhere to?
Okay, so I'll start off in terms of, certainly our intent, and I think we're gonna basically require it of the contractor. And we've gotten feedback and discussions with the city that we would be working during daytime hours, and I think Sarah talked about that. Sarah or Lauren talked about that. Um, we don't currently intend to add hours. I think we recognize the impact that would have to the community. So I don't think we plan on adding hours and during the night and things like that. Chet, maybe you can just talk to compressors and noise levels and where you think what your typical practices are, if you don't mind.
Sure, Jim. Yes, we will have compressors to run our impact equipment to torque the bolts. By and large, these are not loud pieces of equipment. The crane isn't loud. People don't realize probably one of the noisiest things is driving the drift pins to make the connections. It's our intent to work almost exclusively in daytime hours. If we should happen to get behind and need to work late, we would obviously need to ask permission to do so, but we would like to think that we can do all this work during daytime hours. It might take extended shifts, 12-hour shifts, up to 6 days a week, but it is certainly our intent to perform this work. And whether we do it at Manresa or we do it down on Water Street, we'll face the same challenges. So would like to think that we can construct this bridge in the daytime and not have to work at night. That is our intent.
Yeah, so I would just echo that, and I started off that certainly the department's intent and where we will basically have contractual requirements, um, you know, that state that, and any deviation from that would need to be agreed to between the department, the contractor, and the city. But like you said, that would be a significant last case.
Moving on to the next question. Are there any other alternatives being considered, or is this the only plan? What about the area off Selleck Street, for instance? And we did receive several questions and comments similar to this one.
I am not personally familiar with that site, so I'll defer comment on that location for the time being. Like I said, right now we did look at North Water Street. There's some improvements to that property that are required in order for us to do that construction. It's also in the center of South Norwalk. We have, in consultation and discussions with the city, and we're certainly aware of the availability in Manresa, which is why we're currently evaluating it. But we'll certainly take the comment about the other site and take that into consideration. John Hannafin, are you familiar with that location, the other location, if you wanted to offer any comment?
No, I'm not familiar with that location right at this time.
Okay, so we'll check that out.
Next question. What research was done to find a location closer to the walk bridge rather than driving through our residential streets?
Could you repeat that question, Megan? Sorry.
Sure. What research was done to find a location closer to the walk bridge rather than having to drive through our residential streets?
So, we evaluated a number of locations, close to the walk bridge. We are using the Marina property. We are using the IMAX property. We are going to have some trestle and crane, basically on all four, quadrants, close to the walk bridge. We need to have a site where we can assemble the lift span. So that's a slightly different activity. So that's why we're looking at North Water Street and or Manresa. But Chet, if you wanted to add anything to that, basically, it gets to how much lay down and yard do you need in order to construct the project.
Thank you, Jim. It's not really the laydown space, it's the size of the barge that's required to assemble the lift span on that really governs our decision. And if we use the properties on North Water Street, we are going to impact the use of the river because our barge is going to stick out into the navigation channel. Unfortunately, it has to be X number of feet wide, roughly 90 feet wide, and approximately 240 feet long. It's a big piece of equipment, and it is much better suited to use the deep water facilities at Manresa than it is to try and do it at Water Street. While we can do it at Water Street, it would be preferable to use the Manresa. That is a beautiful facility for what we intend to do.
Okay, thank you, Chet.
Next question. Will DOT's use of the site prevent NRG from tearing down the power plant during the entire period that DOT is using it?
So like I said, we are using a small portion of the site. Really what NRG decides to do with the remainder of the site is up to them. But personally, I don't think that our activities are affecting, like I said, the remainder of the site. John Hannafin, I don't know if you wanted to offer anything else in addition to that.
Jim, you are correct. That would be up to NRG to make that the decision, but based on the location of the power plant from our work, I would say that they could do the demolition if they wanted to. We are far enough away from that building.
Jim, can I add? I don't believe that we would encumber NRG at all. And in fact, if they had ongoing operations there, we would modify our operations to stay out of their way. We could do more work on the water, reduce our footprint on shore. Really, it is the deep water marine facility that we need, not necessarily the yard space.
Okay, thank you, Chet.
Next question. Will taxpayers be responsible for the cleanup and decontamination of the site?
So that question is not really relevant to the program. We aren't adding any additional contamination to the site. That's something else that still needs to be determined as far as future cleanup of the site, but that's not really specifically related to the program. Adam, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Sure, I can add to that, Jim. So we are taking precautions to separate the state operations from the historic site operations of the site. That's why we're putting down the geotextile fabric to separate any of our activities from the existing materials that exist on the site. So that geotextile will go down. We'll be putting in 6 inches of stone to be a barrier from our operations. And then when we're done, all that stone and geotextile will be removed from the site so that any future remediation activities can't take place and it won't involve state taxpayer dollars for remediation.
Okay,
Next
thank you,
question.
Adam.
Sound travels across water differently than through woods. I would expect that a great deal of noise will affect the Village Creek and Wilson Point neighborhoods. Has this been considered?
So Sarah or Kim, if you guys want to tackle that one.
would say that we'll defer that question and, as Kim mentioned before, and take another look at that.
Okay. Next question. Will the Manresa site be lit at night? This could be extremely disturbing to nearby waterfront communities.
Chet, do you want to talk about that as far as site, that goes back to maybe security and fencing and things like that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Jim, yes, I can. Because we don't plan on really doing any night work, there would be no reason to light the facility at night. On the occasional times that we may have to work at night, we would light our general work area, but it is not our intent to provide any night lighting. When we go home at the end of the day, the facility will look just like it does right now.
Okay, thank you, Chet.
Next question. How will the dust from the construction be controlled from going into the air and blowing into residential areas?
Jim, can I answer that for you?
Sure.
The steel erection facility that we have there will not generate any dust. The only dust generating activities that we would have there would be when we put the 6 inches of gravel down just to cover the yard. And we'll wet the material as needed so that we don't create dust. But really, the assembly of structural steel is a very clean operation. No dust is anticipated.
Next question. You said the average number of trips would be 3 at the peak. What is the median and absolute peak number of daily trips expected?
So can you repeat that question?
No problem. It was, you said the average number of trips, I believe this is referring to trucks or vehicles, would be 3 at peak. What is the median and the absolute peak number of daily trips expected?
So Chet, do you want to take that one? I'm not sure that we really plan. I mean, 3 is the maximum during the peak construction. And typically, like you said, we're planning on 1. But maybe your math is a little bit better than mine.
I'll try and answer this, Jim. We took the average over an extended period of time. Really, the peak activity for trucking would be trucking in the gravel to build a pad and protect us from the existing material. And if it is an issue, we could limit it to say 1 truck an hour, but there'll be a couple of weeks early in the construction cycle where we need to truck in material. It's 10-wheelers. It's basically it's trucks with gravel in them. That is the most disruptive operation that we'll have in terms of total number of trucks in a short period of time. But it will be very limited to get the pad built, and then they go away. And then on average, it will truly be 1 load a day.
Okay, so based on that, I think the idea would be that between the department and the contractor, we would have in the city that we would talk about those operations and come to some consensus that minimizes the disruption to the community. So we'd have to look at those specific construction activities or those specific operations, and we'll try to get some kind of equilibrium there. But we'll look at specific activities. So that's a good question.
Next question. As a resident in Harborview, an impacted neighborhood, will there be a point person we can reach out to if concerns do arise?
Yeah, so, certainly we've done a lot of consultation with the city, with our existing construction. I believe people are going through the customer care center. And then we get, certainly coordination out to our public involvement people. So, Laura and WSP, and they communicate with our construction folks. We do have, once we go to construction, Mike Mendick, who's the district engineer, will be administering the construction on the department side. So Mike, maybe you can talk a little bit about, the ongoing construction and how we're interacting with the public and communicating, because it'd be similar once we get out to the walk construction.
Sure, Jim. I'm Mike Mendick. I'm the district engineer for our District 5 construction group. So presently, we're working on the CP 243 and Danbury Dockyard projects. So the majority of our information goes out on our webpage as to the work that we're planning on doing, how are we impacting vehicular, pedestrian, marine traffic. Those are updated weekly as significant operations start getting on the planning schedule. Our public involvement team goes out in the field, does distributions of leaflets, email blasts, all sorts of communications. We still have the Welcome Center in Sono that is staffed a couple days a week. So all those avenues are available for consultation, input, but we're always trying to coordinate on the front end. Construction is not a zero-sum game. There will be impacts. We're trying to minimize them in collaboration with the contractor, and also, if we can, condense them so we have a lesser window and we get through some of the pain points. I can't promise that there won't be any noise ever at any point during construction. That's to be expected. So, but we're always going to try and be open about what our plans are, and I think that's the best approach. So, if maybe Laura wants to talk about the PI team, maybe that would be good too.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. We have a dedicated staff for the public involvement program for Walkbridge. Any of you who have issued a question through the website have run into some of our staff also at other public meetings. So we have, as you see on the last slide that's up, a phone to call, email, the website, and all the other social media. I think we're going for one more question.
Following public comment, what are the next steps to get approval for use of Manresa Island?
So, certainly we plan on getting comments through July 3rd. We are going to have consultation with the city in terms of, comments that we receive and utilization of Manresa and or another site. Like Kim Lasay mentioned, we do have to submit our permits, which will need to include Manresa as a staging yard. If that was the decision that we ended up with, those permits would also be open for public review and comment. And then in terms of overall project, we certainly are advancing the design. We want to get the project out to construction as soon as possible. So we anticipate completion of design at the end of this year, and then we'll advance to construction. So, that's it in a nutshell. Certainly, like Kim said, there's plenty of opportunity for people to provide comment and input to, the project plans and to the project plans.
All right, that puts us at just about 7:45, and this concludes the time we had allotted for tonight's meeting. If you've submitted a question and we haven't answered it here tonight, we will be responding to your questions via the email address you provided upon logging into the meeting tonight. As a reminder, a copy of the presentation and comment submission form can be found at www.walkbridgect.com. And from there, you can just click the Manresa Island pop-up that will be at the top right-hand corner of the page. We will be accepting comments regarding the use of Manresa Island through July 3rd, and please feel free to reach out to us at any time using the contact information you can see on the screen. On behalf of the Walkbridge program team, we thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening.